A massive announcement in one of Canada's largest industries. We are losing thousands more auto manufacturing jobs, and the US is gaining 5,000. It is a huge win for them as Canada continues to suffer. And of course, everybody wants to blame this on Donald Trump and his tariffs, but we have proof today it's so much bigger than that. And the Canadian companies manufacturing Canadian products are behaving worse than the American ones. We have to take time to self-reflect. If we don't get serious right now, Canada will enter a recession like we've never seen before. But don't worry, the foreign entrepreneurs are here to save us. Stick around until the end. They're branching into industries I never would have thought of. It's an amazing business case today. There's a lot to talk about in today's video, so let's get into it.
The tariff and trade war with the U.S. is taking a tough turn for Canada's auto sector. Stellantis, the owner of Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, and 11 other brands of vehicles, is investing $13 billion over the next 4 years to expand its manufacturing capacity in the U.S. The national president of Unifor, Lana Payne, stated Canadian auto jobs are being sacrificed on the Trump altar. Stellantis says the move will increase U.S. vehicle production by 50% and add over 5,000 jobs stateside.
5,000 jobs. So for all of the critics out there, it seems like something they're doing down in the U.S. is working.
The shift follows a pause on retooling earlier this year at one of the company's Ontario plants in Brampton, following Donald Trump's plan to add a 25% tariff to vehicles made in Canada. And Brampton Mayor Patrick Brown expressing his deep disappointment tonight, saying in a statement, this announcement represents a step backward from its commitment to modernize and retool the Brampton facility, a commitment that gave its 3,000 workers and their families hope for a secure and sustainable future in auto manufacturing.
We're going to be getting into his statements just after this because there's so many talking points here that need to be addressed. Canada will never survive. There won't be a Canada and a community to protect if we do not face the facts that are there. So let's get into Patrick Brown's statements here, even though this guy's an absolute idiot.
Much for taking the time to be with us this morning. Can I get your reaction to this decision and the fact we've also heard from Premier Doug Ford, we're hearing from the Prime Minister on this. What does it mean for your community?
Well, it's a punch in the gut. 3,000 jobs at Stellantis with Unifor Local 1285, highly trained, highly skilled, spent decades working, dedicating their lives to this plant, and to be abandoned is devastating to say the least. And I'm also concerned about the associated auto jobs in the auto parts section that we also have in our community. This is going to sting. You know, Trump has made it very clear he's going after Canadian jobs, going after the Canadian auto sector. And this is an example of that. And we can't take it lying down. We need to.
So again, just framing there, yes, this is a cornerstone industry for Ontario specifically, but Canada at large, absolutely. However, these jobs did come to Canada from the US. These are American companies where Canada is manufacturing American IP. And like he said, he's coming after Canadian jobs and the Canadian industries. No. They are American industries that currently exist inside of Canada. I am not happy that we are seeing job losses in these factories, but I'll get into in a second. It might not be a lot of Canadians who are affected by these job losses. That being said, the fact that we continue to double down on the rhetoric that they're attacking Canadian companies, Canadian industries, Canadian jobs, it's an American company with American IP. One of the main talking points people continue to say to protect the auto industry is Canada needs to diversify markets. How does that make any sense? We are manufacturing American IP on Canadian soil, and you want to take on America by selling to other markets with American IP? That doesn't make any sense. That would only make sense if we were manufacturing Canadian cars that we were selling into the US, and they said, we're going to boycott Canadian cars. And then we said, fine, we will get new markets. That makes sense. But we are manufacturing American vehicles to service American demand. You can't even say, well, we'll just diversify markets with our Toyota and our Honda, because once again, those are foreign entities that manufacture on Canadian soil to service the American market. Yes, there is a domestic Canadian market for cars as well, but we have no rights as Canada to say we are going to try and manufacture, and now that we're meeting with India, we're going to try and get Canadian autos into India. That makes no sense. because it's Toyota and it's Honda. You don't think that they have factories that are already servicing those markets? Those companies are in Canada because it was more economical for them to manufacture in Canada and then ship to the United States. When it comes to autos, it is almost 100% US focused manufacturing. Yes, Canada as well, but US is the real linchpin to the whole situation. So unfortunately, and he's about to say some statements in a second, we don't have the capacity to say we will diversify our markets away from the US when we're selling US products.
Push back. We have a US administration that is trying to take our jobs and take our prosperity.
Push back how? I mean, what are your options?
Well, I think so far Canada has been relatively positive. You've got prime ministers smiling and premiers smiling, trying to get this trade deal done. But I think it's frankly, we provide a lot.
Also, just objectively not true. There was only 2 countries in the entire world who fought back with counter tariffs during these negotiations. It was Canada, it was China. We had insane anti-American rhetoric. Again, this is Canadians having to accept what we did to end up in this position. We've limped along for 8, 9, 10 months during these negotiations, have not accomplished anything. We are in a worse position than when we started. First of all, we were in a horrible position for the last 10 years because of the proof we will get into. But to say that now is the time that we're going to be pulling all the levers to take on the US, like, this guy's a pretty high profile mayor. So this is very annoying.
A lot of essential resources to the United States as well. And right now our communities are hurting, and the approach of being kind hasn't worked thus far. Obviously, we're seeing the consequences of these tariffs. And frankly, I think Brampton will be the first. Trump has said he wants all of the Canadian auto sector. He wants all of our steel jobs and aluminum jobs. And so if he's successful in Brampton at taking these 3,000 jobs, I think you're going to see that replicated elsewhere. So every tool.
I'm not ever going to cheer on the job losses, and I really don't want this to come off this way. Way I'm presenting this today is to show America is doing things within their own best interest. Canada should be doing things within their own best interest. To continue to call it the Canadian auto sector when we don't own any of the IP, we don't own any of the companies, it's hard to call it the Canadian auto sector. It's a foreign auto sector that manufactures inside of Canada. And it's actually even worse than that, because not only are they foreign companies, shout out to Brittany, she goes by Brat World on Twitter, and she said after using the International Mobility Program, the LMIAs, which is the Labor Market Impact Assessment, Stellantis just flat out leaves Brampton. So she shows Stellantis, a foreign company, was manufacturing in Canada with foreign labor and then selling those cars down to mostly the US, obviously Canada as well. This is going to result in thousands of job losses and will be catastrophic for Brampton. That being said, I don't know how many actual Canadians are going to be impacted by this when they're using foreign labor. So this is also a warning call to the Americans as well. As these companies continue to leave Canada and set up shop down in the US, you guys need to hold them accountable, make sure that they're not abusing the H-1Bs and all these other things to make sure that they're staffing with Americans. Because if the US is going to be taking Canadian jobs as is being framed here, I want Americans in the factory. If I find out that you guys are pumping a bunch of Mexicans into the factory after you've taken Canadian jobs, I will not be happy, US. But it's so much bigger than just this, because as we know, they're using foreign labor, and most of these people who don't even classify under these programs have come over through legal immigration pathways, as we know, who also are not Canadian but technically have PRs and all these other things. But when you look at all of the money we've been throwing into these industries, and we'll get into what the damage of the PRs and the foreign people working for these companies is, especially when it's foreign companies. But we are seeing a complete collapse in the EV manufacturing. We've set billions on fire in Canada. I said it last week that there was just 40 billion in recent announcements, but in just this EV industry alone, there was 52 billion in giveaways, and all of these companies and all of these projects are either delayed, canceled, or just, going fully bankrupt and never going to come to fruition. So I would like to think, again, Canada, let's get serious. That's 52 billion that we were giving to foreign entities to try and create Canadian jobs. It would actually be more economically viable to set that 52 billion on fire to just hire Canadians to pretend to work on a Canadian auto company. That's how bad this misinvestment is, that it makes more sense to set the $52 billion on fire to pretend to start a Canadian auto company, because you can hire tens of thousands of workers for years on a pretend Canadian auto company. If we decide to start a Canadian auto company, please, for the love of all that is holy, no EV companies. It's not a good idea. And we're going to show you that this damage is so much deeper than just Trump's tariffs. But we continue to see, we've got all these articles. Oh, the Canadian economy is falling into recession thanks to Trump's tariffs. That's what the Crown corporations are forecasting. Export Development Canada is forecasting economic growth of just 0.9% for 2025, inching up next year to just 1%, basically zero, because we are still relying on immigration. Well, immigration numbers are down. Yeah, when you use a base year of 2023, the highest immigration that we've ever had, all the immigration numbers are going to look like they're down. We're still way higher than 2015, a decade ago. It is pure economic destruction domestically inside of Canada without blaming Americans. Here's what Canada has done wrong. And Richard Diaz calls this out, and he says, Trump's blunt protectionist policies are loathsome. I disagree. I think leaders should all be protectionists of their own nation, but the lack of self-reflection from our political class for the role they played in engendering Canada's vulnerability by spurning investment and stifling capex is weapons-grade revisionist history. And we can see here in this chart, business investment per capita in Canada versus the US. This is why I said when we were running all the lumber numbers and all of these things, this is the difference. As the US starts to slow down and revamp their industries, their capex is growing. So they're more productive. They're producing more. Canada's is floundering. This has been happening for a decade. It is so much bigger than Trump. Some of you guys might have seen his clip already because I know a lot of you guys follow him, but he makes a point here, which we're going to elaborate on, why this is the actual problem that Canadians need to worry about.
Your mind. Back in 2022, the Liberal government made this statement saying that they are going to secure Canada's telecommunications system. Doing so, Huawei and ZTE, which are owned by China, are banned. This was due to national security concerns, our telecommunication systems, and you'll see where I'm going with this in a sec. Now, the government of Canada put out this statement that basically talks about the conditions of the acquisition or merger of Rogers Communications and Shaw Media. Part of the approval of this was for Rogers Communications to keep a strong presence in Western Canada, including the creation of 3,000 new jobs and maintain their headquarters in Calgary. 10 months ago, a report came out that says after the merger of Rogers and Shaw, about 3,000 jobs dropped.
Here's why we're about to get into why this is so much worse than what Stellantis is doing. This is Canadian companies trying to rig their own businesses at the expense of Canadians, and they're trying to play the government. That's 3,000 jobs dropped, which is the same amount that we just lost from Stellantis today, but these are Canadian companies. Canadian companies. This is betrayal. They are the traitors. These are the companies that need to be held accountable, not the American companies that choose to manufacture in America. It's the Canadian companies that are choosing to manufacture and provide their services from India when they're supposed to be doing all of this in Canada for national security.
And one of the conditions of this merger was that Rogers was going to get fined up to $1 billion if they didn't meet the conditions of the merger. The industry minister concludes that these conditions that they had outlined were not met, it would be fined up to $100 million per year. From what I could find online, as of to date, they have met those conditions so far. Now this is where it gets good, where a whistleblower sent me this information. In April of this year, Rogers concluded a $7 billion equity investment. What they did, they actually created a subsidiary. That subsidiary was co-owned by Rogers, who owns 50.1% of this new subsidiary.
These are all allegations, of course, no proof. We have to just go with the allegations here, and everything I've said so far about them, allegations, right? Allegedly, we don't know.
And 49.9% is by Blackstone. The whistleblower alleges that this is the back-end infrastructure that was sold off and spun into a subsidiary. And apparently Rogers staff was told to join Ericsson or quit. And this happened to roughly 400 employees of Rogers. And it's being alleged that this happened very shortly after that acquisition took place. Apologies, $7 billion equity investment. Now this is where it gets interesting. An employee doesn't want to work for Ericsson, they can't be forced to quit. Rogers has to let them go with full severance. Apparently these employees went over to Ericsson. And this is the email that I got from the whistleblower. You guessed it, in September, Ericsson laid off about 100 Canada-based workers, citing necessary cost cuts. And this whistleblower is alleging that these jobs are in fact going to India. USW is the union that represents these people. They launched 2 unfair practice complaints against Ericsson, interfering in a union organizing campaign. That's currently before the Labor Board. I got a hold of this document as well, which outlines the risk of outsourcing critical back-end infrastructure. And it is quite damning, and it also talks about Five Eyes and NORAD, Canada ensuring that telco data remains protected by trusted jurisdictions.
This should be front page news if these allegations are proven to be correct. Imagine that Canada, which is an oligopoly with like 3 telecom companies, and almost all of them now have allegations that they're shipping all of their jobs to India. That's a problem. Stop being mad at Trump. Stop being mad at Americans when these companies allegedly are doing this in real time. Because somebody we don't have to say allegedly about is this Canadian Tire franchisee who was fined $111,000 for violating the temporary foreign worker program rules. Canadian Tire, a Canadian institution, a Canadian started company, which people still view as part of the backbone of Canada, has been abusing the temporary foreign worker scam, which is making everybody's life in Canada so much worse. We're seeing the mass immigrations making Canada less safe, but look at the economic damage that's happening from this. And Kirk Lubomov put out this tweet. He said, Canada, we need to talk about this. Well, I've been talking about it for quite a while on the channel, Kirk. Every year, immigrants and foreigners working in Canada send out about $12 billion in remittances. The remittance rate out of Canada is much greater than it is out of the US when accounting for GDP. So obviously adjusted for GDP. And of course it is, because Canada has been relying on cheap immigrant labor to run all of the Canadian service industries and companies, once again, hurting Canadians way more. It has resulted in less investment in Canada because many of them are in low productivity, low skilled jobs that don't cover service costs. That's besides taking our kids' jobs and driving up costs. So the aggregated cost to Canada's economy is around $20 billion. It's not a cost we can afford right now. Put a stop to it, which we must. It will add billions to Canada's economy naturally by not having all of these temporary foreign workers in Canada working these jobs. Guys, they have ways for companies to spend. This is why it's all connected. If the CapEx, the capital expenditure, was happening in Canada, they wouldn't have to bring in millions and millions of foreign entrepreneurs. They would invest in machines and processes and all sorts of things to make the productivity increase, which would allow them to hire more Canadians who are also producing more. It would be a better standard of living, better cost of living. It would be better social cohesion. But we can't discount the foreign entrepreneurs too much because they care about Remembrance Day so much, and we know Remembrance Day is coming up, that they're starting their own poppy farms so that they can supply real poppies for Remembrance Day.
While this may look like a regular farm from afar, it's actually the site of the second biggest opium poppy bust in Canadian history.
We have never seen anything like this in the Edmonton region, or in Alberta, I believe, for that matter.
In July, Edmonton police received a tip about a farm in northeast Edmonton. The gang enforcement section then discovered poppies were being grown behind a home, and they found around 60,000 plants.
Wow, these guys really care, lest we forget, right?
The only other time we've really come across a commercial level grow like this was back in 2010 in Chilliwack, BC.
The farm in Chilliwack was around 7 acres, while the field in Edmonton was under an acre. Opium poppies are a different species than one typically seen in gardens.
Oh, wow, never mind. Turns out that they've been running that type of industry. I thought they were showing Canadians how passionate they were about Remembrance Day. Let's check in on some of the accused, shall we? We've got Sukhdeep Danoa, we got Sandeep Dandiwal, we got Gurpreet Singh, and we got Kulwinder Singh. So look at that. We got the brothers Singh back in action, live and in color. So we actually were able to check out some of the agricultural colleges that they were able to study at. And another reason why I'm not exactly concerned that Brampton is losing jobs. Obviously, there's knock-on effects with the areas around that will be impacted. But here's the Brampton people who will not be getting jobs once they graduate from Sheridan College. So. Well, let's see if we see anything there. Well, just a bunch of, all I see is foreign entrepreneurs. It's not like they're all from one country only. It's not like that country and area alone is a quarter of the global population, but we will continue to say that this is, diversity, equity, and inclusion, of course, because we need to make sure that the foreign entrepreneurs show us how to do business, even though white people are 7% of the population and globally. All of Canada's liberal mismanagement has come home to roost. We continue to try to blame America, blame the US, who actually is the one helping us pay our bills, who actually does share the largest land border in the world with us. It is our most important ally, and we should be doing every single thing we can to be working with America while investing in Canadians and Canada. The fact that we're still talking about taking on the US at this point is absolute insanity, especially when we have foreign entrepreneurs that we've proven in this video are not only devastating to local economies, they are being used by the large Canadian corporations to make life worse for almost everybody as they strain social services, increase cost of living, call out the Liberal government, including Justin Trudeau. This is a decade of mismanagement. Canadians, we need to have accountability. Stop blaming Americans. But if you made it this far in the video, you absolutely rock. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We're trying to get these videos out in front of more people. We are trying to grow the channel. If you want to support the channel, you can do it through the link down below. You can also do it directly through YouTube. I'm trying to get some sponsors, still in negotiations. Maybe I'll get one. I want to hire an editor so we can get more videos out for you guys. I really like doing this. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.